Very welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
No, please, thank you for inviting me here.
What is the main factors currently impacting prices from your point of view?
Well, I think, of course, international prices that went so far these last weeks support prices in South America. But weather wasn't so good here last season. In Brazil, particularly in the south of Brazil and some parts of Argentina, we didn't have enough rains to make a good production for this year. So when we started planting the soybean last year, we were hoping to get 50 million tons. And finally, we could merely harvest 45 million tons. So we lost almost 10% of our crop because of the bad weather, because of the lack of rain. And at the same time, as you said, demand is quite strong. You know that Argentina doesn't actually export a lot of soybean as beans. We export mainly soybean oil and soybean meal. And soybean oil is being quite demanded by China and other countries from Asia. So that increase in the demand, together with some lack of offer because of supply, because of this bad weather, is currently taking prices to the levels that we haven't seen for a decade almost.
Yeah, very interesting. We saw, of course, those prices spilling over to the South African market as well. Going forward, we've seen some cool down in the markets. I think the last 2 weeks or the last week especially. Is that the same in Argentina at the moment? Demand, seeing some demand destruction, as they call it. These high prices, people are looking for alternatives in terms of moving away and managing their profit levels.
Yes, well, I think that also you have global finances are supporting commodity prices. We sometimes think that global finances are too far away from commodity markets, but actually they have a huge impact. We know that some of the most important federal banks in the world are keeping interest rates low, and that made investment in commodities more attractive, and a lot of money came from funds that invest in different kind of assets to the commodity markets, and that also supported prices. Well, we are having a lot of uncertainty in the global finances. Some people start thinking that the Fed will start raising the interest rates, and that pushes a lot of noise in the market. And well, we saw a correction of prices, but not only in commodities, also in many assets, including financial markets and other markets different than commodities. But at the same time, in Argentina, we are actually in July will we harvest the second crop of corn. But nowadays we are starting with the seeding of wheat, and producers are starting to think what will they seed this year. In October, September, we'll start seeding the next season. So the market is starting to focus on the new crop, and well, this last crop is in a way already said. I mean, there won't be many changes at this time of the year.
Yes, I think the news has been done. We saw that locally as well. We've got a big harvest in South Africa as well. We got good rains and overall good production conditions. Looking forward, I know in America we've got these recent high prices, and there's a lot of talk about that they've got a very high acreages that's being projected to be planted in corn and beans. Looking forward, going into the next season, what's your feeling? Where are prices headed? Can we feel that global prices can trend downward due to some demand destruction, or do you think we've got a new level, price levels globally? Prices will maintain its levels, or can we see some cool down in global prices?
Well, I think it's of course, it's very hard to say where prices will be in the future. But I do believe that these prices are extraordinarily high. I mean, we reach levels that we haven't seen since 2008 or 2012. So these prices are abnormally high. I mean, from a statistical point of view, prices tend to go to their media or their average in the long term. So I think we may see a correction in the next few months. But I do believe that this will be very linked to what happens with the Federal Reserve in the States and its interest rate, because the demand for commodities, I think it's quite strong. And I think we are still recovering from the COVID pandemic and the loss of cattle hogs in China. And I mean, we are still in the recovery side. So I think that demand is quite strong. But well, as I said before, we have a huge vulnerability to what happens with the global financial markets. So we may see some changes coming from there.
Yes, I agree. I think all these stimulus packages that governments has announced, it created a lot of extra money in the markets, a lot of extra demand, but that can of course lead to additional inflation and of course interest rates going up. And when interest rates go up, we can see some pullback in the markets, as you mentioned, and then we might see that normalization, as you discussed.
Some funds may probably leave the commodity markets and get back to bonuses of the United States or other kind of financial assets. So we may see a correction in commodity prices.
So some interesting to note. What's the main factors that came out of the markets during this COVID pandemic? I know there was a lot of a shift in demand to more necessary products within South Africa. That also happened. Agricultural market prices, commodity prices being high in general.
Yes, of course. In the soybean prices are the highest in the last 10 years, around 10 years. But for corn prices, domestic corn prices here in Argentina got to a new record because the last time prices went up in 2012, the export rates here in Argentina were higher for corn. Now the export rates, the taxes you have to pay when you export here in Argentina are relatively lower for corn. So the domestic price of corn is higher now than it was in 10 years ago. So we are seeing record prices for corn, and that's why we expect this year Argentina will have, or producers in Argentina will lean more towards corn. And soybean, of course, is also in the highest prices in the last 10 years. So that's quite attractive also.
Interesting to note is if you say producers are leaning more towards corn, we expecting more acreages in America to be planted. Can that spell trouble for next season in terms of prices when supply levels go through the roof?
It's quite early. I mean, producers will start seeding corn here in Argentina in October. And well, of course, we have to see what happens with production for next March when we start harvesting. But actually, Argentina is in the last perhaps 4 years started producing much more corn than before. And we are exporting around 35 million tons of corn. That's quite a lot for our country. So actually, we saw quite good demand for corn in Argentina. So I think that, I'm not still seeing at least too many supply regarding the demand. I mean, I'm not seeing that we will have a surplus of supply that will diminish prices.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time you've taken to speak to us today. Very interesting stats and figures going forward. And I think, of course, weather will play a crucial role, and that's always a variable. It's uncertainty. Demand from China is also uncertainty. So
Yes.
I think all these factors playing a role creates a lot of volatility in the markets.
Yes, definitely. Yes, we'll see what happens. Well, as I said before, we are starting with the seeding of wheat and barley here in Argentina. So let's say that the crop, the new crop is starting to take place, and well, we'll see where this goes in the future. It's been quite a year. A year ago, we were seeing oil prices in the negative territory. Do you remember that oil had a negative price? And now we are talking about record prices for commodities. So it's been quite a year. We'll see what brings the next 12 months for the world.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we can have this discussion on a more regular basis, get some information flowing between South Africa and Argentina as well. And I think it's a crucial market for us, determining our local prices as well. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate it.
No, please. Thank you for inviting me. See you next